Mic check one. All right, we're live. Welcome back to Work in Progress, October 14th. Today, we're going to be talking about working out from home, the other WFH. We've been talking about work from home. We've been talking about playing games from home and just kind of maintaining mental and physical health. And today, we're going to focus on that physical side of things in terms of making sure that we can all uh, worry, get our aggression and frustrations out in a healthy way. And so today I have with me, I'm going to have both of you introduce yourself, but I have Saul from Fitness in Reno and Mike Henderson, who you've seen on the show before when we did a little bit of a workspace tour. But yeah, let's have Saul start. If you can just introduce yourself and what you do.
I am the owner of Fitness in Reno, and I specialize in helping people return to fitness and return to what they call the return to play space. But I do a bunch of classes and personal training online, and a little bit in person. So all things training.
Awesome. And you've got perfect background for it today too. We're gonna do some
it's
workouts.
it's not my, I should make that my background in Zoom.
And Mike, I guess
I'm,
a
yeah,
little
I'm
bit
Mike.
of
I'm a videographer here in Reno, and it's sort of an all-around adventurer in rock climbing, running, hiking, skiing, mountain biking, general adventure and camping. So, I do a lot of off-road vehicle adventures, and my backup plan is always, well, I'll just walk out. So, fitness is kind of pretty important to
Yeah.
surviving at times for me.
Yeah, and I know you've been trying to experiment with like trying to fit working out in between your work schedule and like rendering videos and doing your edits and all that kind of stuff. So we'll talk about that today. We also have Saul recorded some in the field video that we'll be able to play here in a second. And we'll kind of just do like a live commentary of that. We'll start and stop it as we go and just kind of talk about it. I think the other thing would be for us to talk a little bit about, I guess, um, what our own personal interests are in fitness. I know, Mike, you just kind of alluded to it with being able to walk out, but I know like I've dabbled in climbing and cycling in the past. I think like accountability is something that I think will be good for us to talk about a little bit today too. I'm using, I have a band called the Whoop Band, and I think Saul, you have one as well that I like to use for just tracking like how much effort I'm exerting each day, and so that tracks my fitness routines as well as just like if you have a really active day moving around, which I think is helpful for just measuring things. But and then I think the other thing is I like to do kind of like you would see in like an office setting, like fitness challenges with friends or office mates. And I think right now we're in week 2 of 6, so we're doing one that leads up to Thanksgiving, just knowing that Thanksgiving is gonna undo most of what we're working on anyway. But at least just a way of getting friends together and checking in each week. We do that on Zoom, obviously with COVID and everything, but then just figuring out like how do we encourage each other to hit our fitness goals without going to a gym, without going to a climbing gym and things like that. So let's jump into the video and then we can kind of do our live commentary. So I'll break this up in little short pieces that I think Saul, you kind of already did for us, but let's kick that off here.
My live stream froze up.
All right, welcome athletes. Today we're going to talk about 3 places to stay healthy while we're working at home. And since we live in Reno, the first and most obvious is the great outdoors. We have great places to run, bike, ski, hike, etc. So those are great ways to keep your cardiovascular fitness up as well as your mental health, just getting outside the house and getting outside into the fresh air most days, except for the smoke some days. But the missing piece here is strength training. And so what we're going to do is we can just use the part of the great outdoors to help us train. So one of the things that we can do is practice our hinging motions by picking up something heavy. We can squat with something heavy, or doesn't matter what load it is. You can pull, do our pulling motions, and then obviously pressing motions. So those are some things that we can do to add a strength component to our already good cardiovascular and mental health program to stay healthy at home.
All right, so we're coming back here. Mike, if you could use headphones for that, because it's bleeding into the stream.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the technicalities of doing a 3-person stream, it's a lot of fun learnings. Awesome. So yeah, Saul, if you want to, you just broke it down a little bit there, but
Yep.
I think obviously getting outside is something that I've done a lot of, just because we know like being indoors, especially at a gym, is not necessarily the safest place for people right now. And we have all these amazing hikes and hills and things that we can go do that when we're not covered in smoke and having to deal with all of that.
Right. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that the mental health and just being the sort of the junction of mental health and physical activity, I think is something that's super important right now, especially since it's probably going to be like this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's important to start, saying, hey, what are my favorite trails? What's something that I have to make an investment in and maybe drive for 30 or 45 minutes? What can I just do out the door? What can I, how do I make this as easy as possible, and or um, you know maybe more rewarding if you go up to Mount Rose or Lake Tahoe or wherever. So it just depends. I think of this as like finding your gears or your speeds on this thing and making sure that you can always take care of yourself in some way.
Yeah, and I think like going up to the N up above Rancho San Rafael has been a popular one. We like doing that one just because we can get it done, without having to commute too far. And then the really rewarding one, being able to drive up to Mount Rose and go do the waterfall, or if you're feeling like a really long hike, being able to get to the top of Mount Rose is always super rewarding too. And spend some
Yeah, a
time
lot of
outside.
people have been out. It's been COVID times have been pretty popular times to be on every single trail around here, and you see people, bikes. Bikes are pretty hard to come by these days. You see people on brand new bikes, everything from brand new bikes to 20-year-old race bikes that people got at a garage sale or from their dad or something. So people are scraping around to find equipment to get out and ride. And while it's the old grump in me is like, what are all these people doing on my trails? But in reality, it's probably a good thing. I mean, it's definitely a good thing. And I wonder if people are going to stick with this sort of after COVID times.
Yeah, I mean, kettlebells and plates and fitness equipment of all kinds have been really hard to find. And I finally, I like to do some things with the kettlebells when I used to go to the gym, and I finally found some. But I do wonder, are we going to see just a market of people just all selling this stuff when they realize they don't use it? Or hopefully they are using it, because I think with all the things that are going on between fires and politics and the pandemic, people are looking to just get that, get something out and running, or picking up something heavy and putting it back down is a really good way to do that. So perfect.
I found myself using we have a bunch of pavers left over from a project, and we have some that are, I want to say, like 20 pounds, and some we have like 3 different sizes. And so some you can just pinch them and use them as a weight to do like a deadlift or something, and some are bigger that you can actually do a curl with. I have this thing you can see behind me on the floor is it's a recycled fire hose that this guy makes. He makes bags and wallets and backpacks and stuff out of fire hose. So when the pandemic hit, there's a lot of people coming out with products like this, and if you were to get the sandbag from a gym, those things are $80. In fact, I ordered one, it was $80, but it was just for the bags that go inside the sandbag, and that's another $100.
Yeah.
So this one was a lot cheaper.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, you can go broke in a hurry buying this stuff.
Yeah, there've been we're gonna see some affordable options that Saul's gonna talk about in a second, but I mean, even just doing body weight stuff. So I think right before the pandemic started, I actually started working with an online personal trainer, and we used very little. He basically, I gave him a list of the things that I have at home, and then he came up with my plan based on what I had. So, I don't have, a system behind like Saul does there behind him, where I don't have plates and things like that. So we just developed something around mostly body weight and just 2 dumbbells, using them in different ways. And some people have been joking that the pandemic's been long enough that they've gotten into and then out of shape in the process of it, just because we've been doing it for so long. And I think there was a lot of people who threw themselves into fitness at the beginning of it, because some people threw themselves into baking bread, and some people, started all these new things. And so hopefully some people are still, either getting remotivated to revisit that, like we are talking about now. I'm definitely, that fitness challenge I was talking about is getting me back into it, because I actually ended up hurting my shoulder a little bit, and been waiting for that to get better so I can get back into it. But let's play a little bit more of this.
Hey athletes, in the previous video we talked about strength training outdoors in an informal environment, just picking up any old rock and doing some squatting, hinging, etc. Now let's take it indoors, but still keep it informal. So the best thing, if you have some space that's about 6 feet by 8 feet, 8 feet, whatever, so that you can stretch out, do some yoga, do some stretching, do some rolling around on the ground. That's a great way to start getting warmed up for some strength training. Strength training can be as informal as picking up a bag of kitty litter and doing our squats and hinges just like we did with the rocks. I find the biggest gap in people's training is doing some sort of loaded carry. So these are perfect for that. You can pick them up and walk suitcase style, or you can walk farmer style. These are great for an intermediate weight, same thing, same purpose, but there's some other purposes too. And then if you want to spend some money, one of these, the 40-pound sandbag is great because it has 2 bags. You can take it down to 20, you can do more core things, you can bring it up to 40, 45 pounds to do more strength, more explosive work. And then I love these bands. I use them all the time in my online classes for doing deadlifts, for doing mobility, for working on your hips and like that with the hip circle band. So those are some great ways to do an informal strength training indoors. All right, welcome back.
Cool, awesome. So I think the other thing that we'll have to talk about, I think, especially as we're all sitting here staring at computers, is how to address all of those things that Saul just pointed out, plus sitting at a desk or just being desk bound in general. I think work from home meant everyone's working from Zoom if they can, and in some cases the literal workday has gotten longer for people because they're juggling a little bit of home in the middle of their workday, and they're just sitting even more than they were pre-pandemic, and unless you're making yourself get out there for those hikes and things. So I don't know, Mike, what are the things that you do to kind of get out of that habit of just sitting and not working out?
Yeah, I mean that's been a huge part of my challenge. You know, before the pandemic, I was coming off about a month and a half of doing a lot of travel and work, and so I was looking forward to coming back and being able to just get back into a routine. Well, that didn't last very long. So the first thing I did was I sort of did what Saul suggested. I gathered all the heavy stuff I had lying around and just made a chart. I built a box to a step up box. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to work for 6 hours, 8 hours. Then I'm going to go outside and I'm going to do that for an hour. And the problem with that was, at that point in the day, the kids are home, my wife's home. There's always something else to do, somewhere to go. It's good to get the kids out of the house and just keep moving. So dedicating an hour of time to it was real challenging. So what I ended up doing, well, right about that time, we did the remote work cycles or the remote work party, whatever. And so Colin, you introduced me to the what's the app? Focus Keeper. Focus Keeper app. So that's an app that lets you set a time interval, and you work 30 minutes, and then you get a 5-minute break. And you'd set a goal of, I have a goal of 8 of those cycles per day. So in those 5-minute breaks, I have my yoga mat here. I try to do 3 body weight exercises or loaded exercises. Sometimes some I can do here, some I do outside on the patio. So I do my work, and then I do that for 5 minutes, and I get back to work. And so 4 cycles of that, and then a long break, and then 4 more cycles. And so it spreads it out throughout the day. And it's not something I have to commit an hour to and, be sort of absent from the rest of the things going on here. So that ends up, it ends up being really a good way to get it all in for me.
Yeah.
Most days.
Yeah. I mean, even if you do try to put it together, having a home gym without the commute, and even if you're doing just body weight stuff, I mean, it makes working out just not take as long because you don't have to go to the gym, get ready for the gym, all that stuff, and it's just readily available. And I've been trying to like design my house to like having them out and obvious. Like if it's put away in a closet, then I'm probably not going to use it. Like, I like that, you have it right there in your office. And Saul, you've got a pretty good setup there that I think we're going to see more of in a second as well. But how do you do that, Saul? Do you like to break it up throughout the day, or are you trying to, you're working with clients and showing them what they're needing to work on a lot. So I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because because of the online stuff and programming and, whatever, it seems like there's a lot more desk-bound stuff than you would think. But I do probably try to do, I have a Tuesday class that I do myself, which I usually don't usually do that. But in the pandemic, I decided that I really needed to put something in my schedule to work out. Otherwise, I just knew I wasn't going to do anything or do as much as I want. And then basically just trying to find, different friends or my wife or whoever, people who want to work out with me and, want to put something on their schedule. So there's usually something every day, probably. I would probably say at least 5 to 6 days a week, we, get a friend to do something. Or like Tuesday, I have 2 classes that I do. So Tuesday is kind of my hard day.
Mm-hmm.
And then some days you're, just kind of just rolling around on the ground a little bit, but there's something to do every day.
Nice.
And I've been doing to your point here, Mike. I'm working with one person who is now trying to do these kind of short workouts. So we do a 15-minute workout. So my wife and I will go, walking or running early in the morning, and then we log on to Zoom or FaceTime at 6:15 and call up my friend and say like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do some deadlifts. We're going to do some squats. We're going to do some push-ups or whatever. And then we're just going to cycle through that for 15 minutes and done. And I'm actually working with another person who, says that's what she needs as well. And so we're going to do that with her. So,
yeah. I imagine, if that person hasn't been doing anything before, like 15 minutes every day is a lot more than doing nothing. And I think in your notes, Mike, I saw about your pull-ups. For me, when I got before I started working out the trainer, I could not do a full extension pull-up. Like I've always been a runner. I've never ever done any lifting whatsoever. And even with climbing, I think now that I can do a pull-up, I'd be curious to see what my climbing looks like now. But
It'll improve a lot.
yeah, it's a big difference. But he had me just starting off with like 90-degree, descends, like almost
and letdowns,
reverse pull up, and then eventually I've been able to build up to 2 and then 3, and then I ended up hurting my shoulder. But I'm excited to see what that translates to and other things. And for me, like even as a runner, I'm excited to see like what does upper body strength look like, because like running a marathon, your upper body takes a toll just as much, holding yourself up or doing a century ride or anything like that too. So it all translates over. So let's watch the last bit of this video and then we'll jump
back. Athletes, we talked earlier about strength training in a less formal environment, outdoors and indoors both. And now we're going to talk about doing some formalized strength training indoors. And the equipment, I think, from least expensive to most expensive is, we talked about in the other video, sandbags. The least expensive over that are, requiring more space and more education, I would say, are some version of clubs and or maces. For people who work outdoor or indoors and who are desk job, working at a desk, etc., taking care of your shoulders and your upper spine, or the thoracic spine here by your rib cage, is super important. And these simple tools, fairly expensive or fairly cheap, less than $100, can help that. With a little bit of education, you can do some great workouts that are both restorative but also good for your strength. The next sort of price point up is obviously some kettlebells here. My wife and I get most of our workouts done with these 12 kilos, 14 kilos, and 16 kilos. We have some lighter ones, but these are 80% of what we do. And the next thing that we use periodically, but not as often as you'd think, are the traditional plates and barbells. And we use those, maybe once a week, maybe once every other week. The majority of what we do can be done with the kettlebells and sandbags and being outside and running, crawling, etc. So that's strength training in a more formal environment. And please ask questions if you have any about any of these things, and check out the blog post that will explain in detail these equipment and where to get them and how to use them, and some sample workouts to see how they work in real life.
Awesome. So yeah, I think those are. I really am interested in the mace and the club stuff. I've seen some of that through On It. I'm assuming that's where you got those from, and
Yes.
it's not something I've gotten into yet, but they look really fun.
Yeah, I would say those and the wooden clubs are just amazing. I think for people who work at a desk, and they just yeah, they're just so awesome for your shoulders. They feel so good. This really takes a little bit of time to figure it out, just the flow of it. But once you get the flow, it's just so good for your shoulders, and yeah.
Yeah, I'd imagine like unless you're actually like out like chopping wood or something, you're not really getting that motion in any like thing that you do day to day. So it's kind of cool.
The clubs are a thing that I don't think I could have at my house with the two little boys.
No,
swing stuff around.
No, or right. that long reach mace, and you'll basically have to pit them against each other. And
but he's right. You know, the shoulder stuff is really a challenge. I've gone through shoulder injuries on both sides, and you know, your shoulders don't get a lot of blood flow, and so you know, if you're sitting in this position and all the time, and you're not getting the range of motion, it's really a challenge.
Yeah. I mean, even a standing desk doesn't give you that much motion. Like you're at least getting into different positions. I know we have a lot of those here. I think are you at a standing desk right now, Mike?
Yeah. Well, I'm sitting at a standing desk.
You're sitting at it.
It goes up.
Yeah. And having that mobility, I think for me, you know, I'm very interested in strength right now, but also without sacrificing the mobility or the ability. Like, you know, I see people who just like do the same workout over and over again, and then they can't touch like their back anymore, right? And it's like you don't want to get there, and that's why I've always enjoyed like things like yoga, which you can do pretty much anywhere, especially yin yoga. Shout out to Kelly and the studio Reno. If you've never done a yin yoga class before, it's extremely restorative. I mean, you're holding poses for 3 to 5 minutes, but they're not like standing poses. Everything is on the ground. You're laying down, and so it's all long held poses. And if you have, you know, been on a run or done any of these things that just puts your body through a lot of stress, it can be just a good way to like a little bit meditative. And if you like shavasana, it's a really great way to do that. So having that long form restorative poses, it's really ends up being stretching with some purpose and intent behind it. And then I think there's a couple online that I'll link in the show notes, and we'll definitely have to link to the blog post that you talked about in the video. But they their business is called Phase 6 Fitness, and they do a lot of warm up movement, mostly body weight, or adding in a kettlebell, the mace, the clubs, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's all this stuff that you can do. I really like a lot of the body weight exercises that you can do. There's really a lot of them that you can do that will build strength and build, you know, flexibility, particularly shoulders and all that. And like the most that you need is like a pad, you know, yoga pad or something. But you could, like stuff that you could do, like if you have to do a bunch of traveling, stuff you could do in an airport or in a hotel. You know, because like if you're going a week and you're working a lot and you're eating out a lot, it's all you ever get to do is walk around. Then you can lose a lot of ground in times like that.
So
it keeps it interesting.
So this one will be a question I think for Saul. There's Jessica is asking, how else can you get a club workout without having a club? So if maybe the same range of movement, or if like with something around the house, if you don't need to actually buy like the specialized equipment.
Well, I mean, one of the things that we used to do at the gym is you just get the 4-pound sledge at the Home Depot. So those work. You just have to be, you know, a little bit careful with them. The thing rotational thing that goes out, so it pulls a little bit of traction on your shoulder. So it's a little bit tricky to do that without a club, but definitely, like the 4-pound mace or any kind of hammer, that kind of thing. You can even put, get like a PVC pipe and put some sand or something in it. You just, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're pretty cheap.
Imagine you could get one of those sledges and like put a pool noodle or tape around it or something, so you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't. Or even like a rubber dead blow hammer would work well too. Like a plastic coated dead blow hammer or something.
Yeah, because I know like even the mace and I guess the club too, a big part of it is that you have all these stabilizing muscles that you just don't use all the time, right? And so your body goes into overtime like trying to stabilize that mace, and if you do it, you're eventually going to develop those muscles, which is, those are the muscles you're like, I didn't even know I had those, and what are they trying to kill me today?
Right. Yeah, so I mean, so those are I would say probably that's the main thing, but you can also do some things a little bit with bands. You can do some things just in body weight, just moving your arms in different positions, where they have a little bit more leverage. So like some of the stuff that's rolling, they do a little bit of that with the Phase 6 people, but there's another place that does it's called Original Strength, and they do these rolls and stuff that are similar to have a similar effect. Not like the clubs necessarily, but getting at the same idea.
Awesome. Well, hopefully that's helpful, Jessica. And I mean, I think if you find that you like it, then graduating to a club at some point, and a little investment in your tools, and that On It makes really good tools. So it's onnit.com. Obviously, they make really good kettlebells and a bunch of other equipments and stuff too, if you can get your hands on it right now.
I would say that the cool thing about the clubs is that they're pretty inexpensive for for how many ways that you can use them, and for how little space they take up. So they're a good investment for sure. Again, if you have kids, especially young boys, problematic, but yeah, and especially yes. So I mean, and they have a really good. Usually, they have a really good Black Friday sale.
Oh,
and
nice.
So those I'm looking at the website now. The maces are 27 for the 7-pound and 92 for the 25-pound. 25 pounds doesn't sound like a lot of weight, but I'm guessing that it is on a mace.
Yeah, the 7. I mean, that's the cool thing about these clubs. They go a long, a little bit of weight goes a long way. And like Colin was getting at, they're not meant to build strength necessarily. I mean, you can, lift, water bottles or whatever, or, kettlebells or whatever. But these are just great for keeping your shoulders and your back healthy and your neck healthy. So I use the 7 for the mace and the 10. And those are awesome. And then the clubs, really, you shouldn't use more than like 1 or 2 pounds, really. The 4-pound sledge is a little bit on the excessive side.
Yeah, because when you look at if you YouTube some of the workouts, and I think they have some of their own workouts around these things, you're doing movements that you would not want to be throwing around a lot of weight, because you're not going to be developed.
Like spinning them around.
Yeah. Yeah. The other one that I just found was a weighted rope, which is really interesting. Not in a jump rope way, but we'll find some links and post some videos. But it's very unintuitive, and I'm sure it looks hilarious when you're trying to learn it, because you're probably hitting yourself with it. But it's not a lot of weight, and you can graduate to higher and higher weights. And it almost looks like a dance of some kind. And very, very, like, if you can pull it off, like, you're very flexible and very mobile, because it's using every part of the body to kind of dance in and out of that. So
I used this. Speaking of ropes, I took an old climbing rope that was more or less retired, and I think I folded into fours, into quarters, or into thirds, and then taped it together, and so that I can use that as a battle rope. I don't use that all the time, because actually I haven't used it in a while, but battle rope is a really good thing. You put it around a post, and then you you whip it up and down for a time interval, and it burns everything in your arm, and you end up, there aren't too many upper body workouts that are aerobic, and that's one of them.
Right. Yeah, you can do there's some really cool things you can do with the battle ropes. You can even just, be on your knees and just take the battle rope and then just, put it over your head this way, like you're doing like monkey bars, and then go back the other way this way. I mean, even that kind of thing, or even just pushing it over your head and, walking with it or some, I mean, there's some, I took another course from On It, doing the battle ropes, and there's so many ways that you can use that. It's pretty cool. So those are some pretty efficient. They have some pretty efficient tools with On It. The kettlebells with the maces. I think the clubs are probably more versatile than the maces. Than obviously the battle ropes.
Nice. Yeah, this is the unofficial sponsor of this episode.
Right?
Is On It. On It, and I've always been a fan of Rogue stuff as well. They just have really well made stuff. But On It puts out really good content too. If you want to follow them on Instagram and YouTube and all of that, I think it's, again, things that you can do almost anywhere, I think, which is the most important thing to think about right now. And you don't need to go out and buy all the stuff that's behind Saul right now to get in your workout. You can go on a hike, you can go grab something heavy and, take it with you, whatever that means. So cool. I think I know we started a little bit late, so we have a few more minutes, but is there anything that you guys want to talk about to round out everything? Any tips or things that you just...
I mean, I think the most important thing that you kind of touched on a little bit is that I think people think that body weight somehow is safer than loaded whatever, even water bottles, but it doesn't always work out that way. And I think that if you're really going to be serious about working out and investing in some equipment, take find a trainer that can do a movement assessment on you to make sure that you're not putting your shoulders or your hips in a dangerous position, or a loaded position that you don't really have a whole lot of ownership on. So, I mean, there's a physical therapist here. Nevada PT is good. There's all kinds of, places. The guy, Kyle at the American Iron that I used to work at, he's good. I would do it as well for the people here at Reno Collective. But I think that there's a misunderstanding about bodyweight exercises being safe and just saying, hey, well, like a squat is a natural movement. You should just be able to have anybody do squats right off the bat, or a lunge. And it's not really that way. And also, many times learning how to do movements correctly, or how to protect yourself, or how to do movements that are appropriate for you, doesn't take that long and doesn't take that much of an investment. And you can spend a long time working out and really be doing yourself a disservice, or not doing it the appropriate way. And it's not quite wasting time, but it's definitely, there's a better way to do it.
It's wasting time if you end up hurting yourself.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. I mean, that's my shoulder right now. So I need to, I'm working through it, and I haven't seen anybody for it, but I imagine, do you see people that want to, they want to accelerate, like they want to get to heavier weight or more reps sooner than they should, and so then they just, because it's hard to, like, even as a runner, it's like you are always told to go on a run, go slower than you normally do, and everyone's like, oh, that's boring, I don't want to do that, because I want to go fast, I want to get a PR, I want to do something. So are people getting a little bit ahead of themselves? Because body weight, you can really hurt yourself with your own body weight. We especially right now, like we've some of us have put on some pounds, so we have more weight to carry.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that in the tagline that I think of, or the hashtag or whatever, is stop exercising and start training. So understanding what your goals are and what your capacity is, just like the same way that you're told, hey, I have this equipment, to your trainer, you also have a certain amount of mobility in your shoulders, and you have a certain amount of flexibility in your thoracic spine, and sort of stability in your lower, lumbar spine, and et cetera, et cetera. Those are all things that you bring with you to the workout, and you can always improve on those things. But yes, I mean, for some people, especially those people who have been hurt, doing sort of a generic program, they're all ears and they want to do it the right way. And they, especially if they're, most of the people that I train 35, 40, 45, they're, they can't get hurt. They just can't.
Yeah. Can you explain the return to play a little bit as well?
Return to play is basically people who are seeing some sort of, licensed healthcare practitioner for, some sort of acute injury or chronic injury. And what they do is, they'll treat that pain and get them out of pain or get them to where they can manage their pain. And then depending on the person, they'll, that, like the chiropractor that refers to me, will say like, okay, talk to Saul about, this thing or that thing. Or most of the time it's building some core strength and then getting them back to the activity that really brings them joy. It could be like, I have one person who, she wants to keep up with her grandsons. And I have another person who's a runner in high school where they're running, ridiculous amounts of mileage and trying to get that person to figure out how to train a little bit smarter. And it's the gamut,
Yeah.
It's just all the people basically that have seen a licensed healthcare practitioner for some sort of injury.
Gotcha.
Yeah. One thing I'd also like to add, with a lot of this stuff, as you get back into this, I don't know if people are doing it so much anymore, but like a year ago, people were doing like the push-up challenge, where they were doing like 20 push-ups a day for 20 days or something, and my thing is like, well, why not do 20 push-ups every hour for 20 days? Like, I mean, you don't need a whole day to rest from 20 push-ups, right?
Right.
Get in the habit of like set a timer every 2 hours, do 20 push-ups or pull-ups. When I was in high school, I was doing a lot of climbing, and I was like, oh, I want to do pull-ups, and so I would set a timer and go do a bunch of pull-ups at one point.
Yeah.
Try and create these, and then you talk about goals, like what's your goal? Like goals that are like, most people are hard. It's hard for people to stick with stuff. Like, I want to look good in a swimsuit. Well, it's like, that's tough. You do a lot of work for that. How about I want to do 15 pull-ups? That's
right.
That's something that's more concrete and it's not subjective.
If you can do it or not.
15 pull-ups, you've done them.
Yeah. I think that, speaking of that, I think that goal setting is definitely something that I always work with the athletes. It's, sometimes it's easier than others. But if you research this thing called Grease the Groove, and it's by this guy, Pavel Tsatsouline, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, from Strong First. And it's really just like, do a pull-up and then come back an hour and do another pull-up, then come back an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. And you get, 4 or 5 pull-ups done in a day, or 5 pull-ups. But then after you do that for a couple months, it's pretty amazing, this, whatever the minimum effective dose of pull-ups or that kind of thing is, pretty lower than most people think.
Yeah.
I mean, for sure, like the 20 push-ups, if you've been doing push-ups for a long time, I know people can bust that out like in 30 seconds, but it's not necessary. One push-up, for some people is a really nice, push-up, slow motion, 5 seconds or maybe even 10 seconds. Super valuable.
Doing one of those every hour, is good.
Just make it just not just a part of your day, a part of this, everything you do all throughout the day, maybe. I mean, I kind of do that, but I don't necessarily do that myself, but it certainly is something that would be a lot more beneficial for people to, a lot easier than going out to the gym at this point in time.
The way that I got it with my pull-ups, he had me doing as many as I could within a certain amount of time, which at the beginning was rough because I couldn't do any, right? So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to do half of one and another half of one. And you get to do as many as you can in that time frame with breaks, right? So with a pull-up, I'm doing one, then I'm waiting until I can do another one, and then I'm waiting until I do another one. And then I write down, okay, I did 3 this week. And then next week I try to do even a half of one more and just try to keep adding to it. And same with push-ups and squats and all those things. And like, even as a runner, I thought I had like a strong base for like lower body, and I'd never done squats before. And that was interesting for sure. I definitely got stronger, but I was also like, what the hell? I've never felt this pain, and I run a lot. So So yeah, lots of different ways to approach it, and obviously, if you have questions and have not worked out before, working out doesn't have to mean lifting weights. It could be going on runs or hikes and things like that. And if you want to get into the weights, find somebody who knows what they're doing so that you get introduced to that properly.
I got one more thing I want to ask you guys about.
Yeah.
If we still have time, do we still have time?
Yeah, sure. It's our show. We can do what we want.
Oh, sweet. So I don't have a fitness tracker, and I have resisted fitness trackers and smartwatches for a while. But now I'm sort of realizing that along with tracking my work cycles and sort of keeping to a schedule, I kind of sometimes I'm wondering, how much am I doing here? What am I getting done fitness wise during the day? Is a fitness tracker something that I could use to sort of know what I've done throughout the day and be able to sort of be like, all right, well, I got to go do XYZ more to get my dose for the day or something? Is that what it's for?
Yeah, I think, Colin, I think you probably use the Whoop a little bit more than I do. I find the Whoop to be, or devices like the Whoop, to be best for tracking your sleep. I think that's probably the most important thing to track, at least for me. And the second most, I think, valuable, technology tool is a heart rate monitor, to make sure that when you go out and you do your run or whatever, that you're going slow enough. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but there's like a zone of your heart rate that I think of as called fun hard, and it's where most people kind of live, and they're just kind of exercising in that one zone. But I think there's some pretty good research and some good evidence, evidence from coaches, that spending more time a little bit lower in your heart rate at first, and then building up your speed and keeping your heart rate lower, is probably a better, more effective way of training.
Yeah.
So some sort of heart rate monitor, like a Polar H10 or whatever, that can attach, by Bluetooth by your phone, and
Can some of the watches do heart rate too?
Yeah, so like the Apple Watches do, the Fitbits do, the newer ones. The Whoop does continuous heart rate, so it's getting heart rate all the time. The thing is, it depends on what your goal is. So for me, I got this one because it's not a watch. It doesn't have a screen, and it lasts 5 days on a charge, because like with the Apple Watch or whatever, I would burn out the battery, take it off, and then forget to put it back on. And with this one, the charger just slips on the top of it, and you can keep wearing it while it's charging. But I use it to know the sleep side of it, but mostly because it helps you to know if you're well rested enough for a hard workout, or like it'll tell you, hey, you're going for a run, you slept awful last night, do not expect this run to be fun, right? It's especially or you had
fun, right?
or make it fun. But like maybe you worked out really hard the day before, so it tracks your strain of the day. So for me, I try to hit 10 or more a day. That's like the number that for me, if I am actively if I don't do anything, I will not hit 10. But if I actively go on a pretty spirited walk or a run or a workout, then I'm going to go over 10 pretty easily. And so for me, that's useful. I definitely don't hit it every day. But it gives you a recovery score from your sleep.
Yep.
And then like, oh, I did a really good recovery. And so if you're in the green, it's actually pretty hard to stay in the green on recovery. And it just gives you more inputs. So if you're not a data person and you don't need more inputs, it's probably not great. If you never look at it, it's not going to be very helpful. But yeah, I think that's where it's at for me. Like, I don't really do steps and stuff like that, but that's another way to do it. Like if you hit 10,000 steps, it's a pretty good day too.
Also, I think the cool thing that is with the Whoop is that they do the monthly score, right, or something like that. They have a monthly data thing. I don't really use that much, but I mean, it's a good way of capturing data if that's important to you.
Yeah, so then it'll actually show you, like, in that month, just how well you did in terms of were you consistently getting good sleep? Were you consistently getting you know, what does your recovery look like, and then what does your performance look like you trained really hard before a race, or you're actually not training very much, or you know, any of those different things. But again, if you don't look at it, then it doesn't really help. So
the sleep thing, you know, that all these things, these apps that track sleep, like I have terrible sleep generally, and so then I have sleep anxiety, and that makes it worse. Like, I don't know if the sleep thing would help, or if it'd be like some sort of positive feedback, or what.
It could. I mean, the
know.
interesting one about this, the Whoop and even the Aura ring, the
Yep.
AURA, is that they get HRV, which is your heart rate variability, and then your resting heart rate. And so it's been interesting for me to see, the more that I've been paying attention to it, how those numbers are affected by like really bad night of sleep, how that affects your variability. And it, again, if you're a data person, you can geek out on all of it, you know, 9 ways to Sunday. But for me, it's more the accountability. I actually got the Whoop to kind of replace my trainer. Sorry, Saul. Was that I was like, I could pay for the trainer and I did. And once I felt pretty good about what I was doing and I didn't have any questions, now I pay for Whoop, because Whoop is a monthly subscription. And I do that as an accountability tool. I'm paying for Whoop, so I'm going to use it. If I wasn't paying for it, I probably wouldn't check it as much. But every time that bill comes around, I'm like, oh, did I use it? Was it, you know, useful? Or is it just, you know, maybe it's even just a spreadsheet or like an app that tracks your workouts. Like you can just record what your reps were and weight and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've had all kinds of athletes do all kinds of things. I mean, it's, to a certain extent, it's whatever, you know, whatever works for you and seems intuitive and is the easiest, you know, and you know.
Yeah, I mean, even a bullet journal might work for some people if you just write it down. But the best system is the one you use. So whatever works for you. Cool. Well, I think that will probably end it for this episode. We went a little long, and I know our audio is all over the place, so sorry for the people listening at home. I've been trying to adjust it as it's been super loud, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys have any more questions, we'll definitely link out to everything we've been talking about, and you can check out Saul at fitnessinreno.com and all the things that he does there. And Mike has a YouTube channel as well, if you want to plug that, Mike.
Yeah, check out the YouTube channel. It's All Terrain Family right here on YouTube, or over there on YouTube,
depending on where you're watching this. But yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining.
You have some good posts on Instagram.
Yeah, thanks.
So you can see all of Mike's adventures with his family out in the great outdoors. And we'll see you next week. We don't have a topic for next week, so if there's something you guys want to see from us, we've been thinking about doing like a Q&A episode, getting Rachel back on here, and we can talk about anything that people want to talk about, or if there's a specific topic that you're interested in. We're looking at some topics around personal finance and money and fire and stuff like that as well. So definitely tune in, and we'll see you next week at 5 on Wednesday. Thanks, guys.
Great. Thank you. See you.